the show, and today we're talking to a sports broadcasting icon here in the DMV. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss this. And welcome, I'm your host, Veronica Harris, and today I have with me...
Gregory Harris, your big little brother.
Little big brother.
Whatever.
And who are you today? You the co-host? What you
MVP.
doing? Oh, you the MVP?
Actually, starting next season, it's going to be the Gregory Harris show, not the Veronica Harris show.
You taking over?
Yeah.
You having a coup?
Might as well.
All right, well, anyway, we'll say that for another conversation. But right now we have actually two great guests, but there's one probably people know more than others. He's an icon in sports broadcasting, and he's, just been a part of the sports scene in DC for a long time. And he's very knowledgeable, and he's just had an awesome career. Do you know who that is?
He's the man.
Oh, you know who it is?
Name rings out. Yeah, I know who it is.
You sure?
Yeah. You can call his name?
I'll let you do the honors.
We share a name, actually.
We do.
It's Glenn Harris, the one and only Glenn Harris.
Hey, man.
Yes, and he's also here with his brother, Ron Harris.
Hello.
So we have siblings here and siblings here.
Right.
Awesome. All right, so Mr. Harris, okay? Mr. Glenn Harris, because both of you could probably answer to that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our audience, because all of them may not know who you are,
Right.
Especially with the way the media has changed now, because when you were on internet and streaming and all that stuff wasn't a part of modern society. No. So for all those who listen to you from the radio, which is what I did, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was a physical education major, really. And I went to Howard University. And I was originally going to go, I wanted to go to the University of Miami. But when I was in Miami, I was playing JUCO, junior college baseball. And I didn't like it down there too much. It was a little, in the 80s, it was pretty racist down there at the time. So I came back, and Howard University offered me a full scholarship, baseball scholarship. They played baseball then. And 4.5 years, man, I had a great career there. And broadcasting wasn't what I was thinking about at all, but I always could talk, always could read, I always could do things like that. And Dewey Hughes, who's a legend in this town also, he lives in Los Angeles now. He said, look, man, I'm gonna give you a shot. You wanna come on television? I said, come on, man, what are you talking about? So he said, I think you'll be a good sportscaster. He said, well, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the teleprompter away from you. He always put you on the spot. Teleprompter, he took it away. He said, I want you to go out and get me some community sports. So where community sports, what is that? So I had to go to the hood and get community sports. I lived in Southeast DC, and I got stories. I didn't know how good I was gonna be. And I got, excuse me, and I got the stories, and that's when things started kicking off. I was with Sue Simmons, who was a heck of a broadcaster here at Channel 4.
Yeah.
And then she went up to New York, and then she was big up there.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. I hear that name, but Sue Simmons, yeah, we know her up in the...
And Rudolph Brewington. Brewington was a radio guy in this town. He lives out in Las Vegas now, retired. But that's how I got kicked off. And I never really had any real training except for one period of time when Dewey took me in his office and gave me about 10,000 scripts like that.
Wow.
And a glass of water, and said, "Go for it, man. See what you can do." And it was tough. He was tough, and told me how tough this business was. So I said, "Okay." So that's why I'm wearing a Texas Ranger hat and should be wearing a Washington hat, but I got a lot of them. So, but it was tough trying to get in those days. But he had a lot of pull because he was at Channel 4. He was an executive there at the time. I don't know what his actual job was there, but he was big time, and got me in. The first time I ever did a rehearsal I was in somebody's chair.
Well, you know what? Let us stop right there because I want to ask you some questions about your broadcasting career, like the beginnings. But Mr. Ron Harris, tell us briefly a little bit about yourself.
Well, like he said, we're from D.C., Southeast D.C. I attended Ballou High School, played all sports there. I ended up at GW, played on their baseball team.
Okay.
First black guy to really play, not to be on the team,
Right.
but first black guy to really be a starter and one of the significant players. And then for 9 years, I coached baseball at Howard, 2 of which Glenn played.
Okay.
Chuck Hinton was our head coach, former national Washington senator at that time. And from there, I played on some upper level amateur teams, Cape Cod League up in Massachusetts, the Valley League down in Virginia, the Maryland Industrial League here. So as a player, I kind of stopped playing in about the mid 80s. And my career started at Howard University in the Office of Residence Life, and I stayed there for 31 years.
Okay.
I also did some television. He and I co-hosted a show during a stretch
All right.
at HUR, a show called Let's Talk Sports. And that came on every Sunday evening. And one of our final guests that we had, we remember dearly, was Len Bias.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Bias talked with us 2 or 3 hours after the show. And he had just gotten drafted by the
Wow.
Celtics. And of course, a few days later, he was out of here.
I think everybody, especially in this area, can remember almost, it's like, where were you when this happened? Because anytime anybody mentions Len Bias, I remember like where I was and, you know, when I found out that he had passed away. I had a chance to know him indirectly through one of his teammates at Maryland. And he was always a nice guy, but I remember when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, he is larger than life when you saw him. I mean, we talk about, you know, basketball players and like LeBron James being one of the most gifted or, you know, they say a freak physically. But to be like 6'9", 260, he is 6'8", 6'9", 260.
LeBron?
Yeah, LeBron.
Yeah, that's what they
You
say.
know, to be that, you know, he definitely is a man amongst boys, has been for a long time. And but back then, like Len Bias was that man amongst boys. So I kind of think like before there was a LeBron James, there was Len Bias.
Well, the good thing about Len Bias is he got better every year because he wasn't that great a shooter at first.
Right.
And as he moved on, he started hitting that outside shot. He was a tremendous shooter.
Well, it seems like you guys know a lot, especially about the sports people or sports icons here in the DMV. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and when we come right back, we'll be asking you some questions about your broadcasting career. Brief questions, but then we want to talk about, you know, sports, because that's what we're here about.
It's time for a break already?
It's time for a break, but do you know
Can I
also?
get a question in before the break?
Well, hold on. Do you know well, he was a phys ed major. I was a
Yeah.
phys ed major. You don't, but we're both phys ed teachers
Physical
now.
education, FIZZED.
Yeah.
Yeah, young people. Man.
No, but physical education.
So was I.
Yeah, Dr. Sam Barnes. I mean, he.
Oh, you are both physical education teachers or majors?
I was a major and a teacher.
And a teacher, and you were a major. See, siblings, same thing, same thing.
Same
But do you have a
thing.
question before we go
Yeah,
to break?
so, you know, the Harrises, we do have, you know, the longevity gene. And y'all two look great. Y'all, I'm not going
Yes.
to tell your age. I was surprised to hear as older you said you was.
69 years old.
But we do have that gene of longevity. But from a health and fitness aspect, what do y'all do with your life, you know, nowadays? From a health and fitness
Well,
aspect.
you know, both of us are diabetics. Our father, everything was, what do you call it? And
I don't know, but it was kind of a genetic
Yeah.
thing.
our
Yeah,
father had
had
diabetes.
diabetes.
I never had a
And
drink.
we don't drink or smoke. Never
Yeah.
did.
Never had a drug.
That
That
might
is
help.
genetic.
So it can happen. But I used to, when I quit playing baseball and everything, I used to weight train. I was 270 pounds, 280
Wow.
pounds. I was a big dude. And I
To
used
play baseball,
looks
that's
like
Oh yeah, but I wasn't a baseball player
Okay.
at
At that time, yeah.
270
Oh, okay, I was about to
pounds.
say.
Looks like you still weight
Yeah,
train.
I
well,
know, yeah.
no, I weigh about 225, 230 now.
Okay.
But I wasn't no fat boy. The thing about it is, it was genetic. My father had diabetes, and he also had what else he had?
He drank a lot.
Yeah, that's what he did, right?
Well, besides the alcohol, but it seems like you guys you definitely do take care of yourselves, and
Yeah.
you look great. And that's what we espouse here, the health and fitness of things, staying healthy even after you finish your career. But like I said, right now we're going to take a break, and when we come back, that's when we'll have our questions. So you want to be ready?
All right.
All right, we'll be right back.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
And we're back. I still have my big little brother here, and we are the Harrises from the northeast side, and now we have the Harrises from the southeast side. But let's ask some questions, because our audience, they would like to know more about you, especially maybe the ones that do know you, maybe forgot a few things, and definitely want to introduce you to the new ones. So you're broadcasting. What you interviewed Len Bias, obviously, but what other person would you say stood out for you in your long career?
I've interviewed so many people, so many. I remember one sitting in a hotel room with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, just me, him, and a tape recorder. That was it. He was interesting, but he's only like 15 days older than I am, so we had a lot of things to talk about. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I can't remember everybody right now.
It's probably too many to count.
We had lists of people. With my producer, after the 23rd year, he said, "Man, I can't find anything anymore." But I've talked to a lot of people, many people.
But James Brown was one of your
JB,
favorites.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, James Brown.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, well, I remember when James was working for Xerox.
Really?
You know, and
oh yeah, James Brown for the
sportscast,
from the
not
math.
the entertainment.
yeah, you talking about, yeah. That's right. You were running track. You didn't get it. You know,
Why do you always talk about the track people
Is
like
that the
that?
best thing about, is that your favorite thing, meeting all the interesting people, being a broadcaster?
Yeah, I had my own style of doing things because I let people talk. You know, it was a thing where a lot of broadcasters, they talk. They're talking so much, and the guests are like this. Okay, but you know, it's. I always let them talk.
Okay.
And my director used to always say, hey, you down a couple seconds, get out of here, get commercial break. I said, okay. But I would cut it off like that. But I always gave a person a chance to talk. Now, if I knew when they weren't solid and talking about the right thing all the time, and they start drifting on, then I could get into that. But that just takes experience.
Okay.
That's all.
So, Barry, I don't know that you know that Mr. Harris and I first met a long time ago when I used to call in and give like the sports report for young people, like what the young people were doing in sports and things of that nature. So, and this was before cell phones, so I would have to scramble and get like to a payphone if I was out at a practice or something like that, because we never missed. But that's how we came, and it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I got into it. So that was fun for me, being able to do that as a young person. So I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity for that. So the next question we want to ask you is, today's sports, your career's covered several decades. What is the biggest difference you see now between today's athlete and the athletes
I don't
in
know
the past?
if the athletes, everything is on TV, everything is on, you know, you see all of these things about these commercials about dunks and all this kind of stuff. The young guys need to have some counseling from some people. Say, look, man, hey, you can't do all of that. You want to play the game right, play it correctly. I'm not saying that don't do what you got to do, you know, but I mean, it's just like a guy like, what's the kid's name from San Francisco, the jump shooter?
Curry.
Curry. When Curry is playing. I mean, he has experienced a lot because his father played.
Yes.
And he went to the games. He saw the games, you know. So the game is elevated a little bit, you know, with a three-point shot. Three-point shooting has been around for a long time now. But he's taking advantage of it. He knows how to shoot from out there. And it's not boring either, you know. I mean, he just goes for it. But years ago, nobody would shoot that deep, you know, because there's only 2 points, really. But, I mean, you know, he's brought a lot of excitement to the game by shooting out there, and so the other kid too. He can shoot out there too.
Thompson.
Thompson.
Yeah, Thompson. He's a good player. But you know, it's just changed. The game is still, the pro game is still strong, but each time it goes, I don't even compare players like that. Oscar Robertson, those guys, they were great players. You know, and they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But I don't know if anybody's, because when somebody goes to the Hall of Fame, I stop talking about them because they're already in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
What are you talking about? You know. So.
But do you see, like, disregarding the game itself, but do you see differences in how athletes carry themselves, how they behave? I mean, because I never want to be, I mean, I'm older, but I never want to be that person that's like, oh, these young kids today. No, because we all, when I was young, we all did stuff too, which was, I would think, pretty much similar. But do you notice anything that was like, the athlete is just a different?
Right.
Well, I do because of the times, and like you said in the break, you know, there's cable TV now, there's streaming, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can get yourself YouTube in front of a camera or three. And I think that sometimes distorts the player who is not trying to learn the fundamentals of the sport that they're playing. They're trying to maybe be a little too spectacular. In other words, I want to get on SportsCenter, but I'm not going to make that bounce pass that I was taught as a kid. I'm going to try to make one around my back and hopefully connect for a layup. So that's what I see, basically. But the bigger, stronger, faster, that always applies from the old days to now.
Right.
Of course, the nutrition is better, the training is better. Coaching, I don't know that coaching is that much better because the game is played the way it should be played. And if you got a good coach as a youth player, you will learn. And then as you move up to the ranks of junior high, maybe high school, college, and possibly the pros, you're going to hopefully get better coaching, but your fundamentals are there.
It's just like in baseball. Most pitchers today, their average speed is 90 plus miles an hour.
Yes.
It wasn't like that 30 years ago. I mean, they had some guys that throw 90 miles an hour. But I mean, a good fastball was 85 miles an hour, which is a good speed. But it's the weights now. Everybody uses weights and they work out. It's a whole different workout program now that makes guys stronger. I look at college baseball on television, guys throwing 92, 90 plus all the time.
Wow.
So when we were playing, there wasn't that many 90 plus mile an hour throwers, but they had some throwers that could throw 90 miles an hour. I said, what if they were lifting weights? Good gosh.
Right.
You know.
Well, that's interesting. And you mentioned fundamentals, and that's something that Gregory and I always talk about. Gregory specifically is big on the fundamentals. So, but do you have a question?
Well,
Fundamentally speaking.
I didn't have a question, but I wanted to respond to that the question you posed to y'all too about the difference in the athletes, and like you said, bigger, faster, stronger, athletically. You know, it's a little differences, but basically they're the same. Watching the NBA playoffs and seeing how many blowouts there was in the playoffs kind of leads me to believe that the one problem with today's athlete spills over to the play, which I've seen in all the blowouts.
Well, you're talking about when you watch, I mean, any playoffs you've seen, right? So,
but
any
first,
NBA playoffs.
And as a coach, you coach, and as a coach, we could get players to respond by telling them, you know, you're not doing good enough. That's no good. Today, you tell a player that's no good, or you're not playing good enough, you're not putting out enough effort, they're liable to shut down on you.
Or they won't be around too long.
Yeah, in the pros, if you have a track record like a Phil Jackson, who won 6 titles, they probably wouldn't stand up to him. But a younger coach who is making his way, now Tyronn Lue is now in his first year of coaching the Cavaliers. And he was a decent player, played in the pros, so he could obviously play. But it's LeBron James' team, and he's the one who's going to set the
But have y'all
pattern.
noticed how, like, a lot of the old school coaches, aren't having much success because they're not. And I think Coach Carl or somebody was saying it like, no, Byron
Scott.
No, Byron Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
He was like,
Byron
today
Shaw, that's right.
you have to stroke these guys, these athletes now. You always got to be pampering them and stroking them because they can't take the hard coaching that we're used to. And, I'm sure like y'all used to coach.
I agree,
but I
somewhat.
don't think it's hard coaching. I think our coaches, when we were playing and probably when you were playing and when you were coaching, is about accountability. Like our coaches held us to account. Like if we weren't doing something right, they let us know and they said, okay, now this is something that needs to be fixed. When I coach, I'm all about the accountability. Like, I hold you accountable. Like, because if you're not doing your job, guess what? Somebody else is going to be doing it.
Well, you're old school. See, it depends on but you have to change. If you're a coach in the pro level, you have to change a little bit because if management is paying these people, you have to study and work and say, okay, how am I going to work with this guy? Because you don't know, It doesn't mean you hate them or whatever, but these kids come up in a whole different era now.
It's like you gotta love them. Like they expect to be. I don't say love, but they want to be liked. But no, they expect that, especially at elite level, when you're good, and justly so, people tell you that they're good. It's like, as the coach, you must be that too. It's almost like you got to be their friend. And I'm not saying you can't have a friendly relationship, but no, I'm not your friend. I'm your coach. I'm paid to coach you. So therefore, that also means my responsibility is to correct you or constructively criticize you.
But you got coaches who are what I call yellers and screamers.
Yeah.
And then you got coaches who are calm in their demeanor. Now, you played for one of the great coaches in the history of coaching basketball, who was the only coach of a high school team in the Hall of Fame until the kid from the coach from New Jersey got in there.
Oh, Bobby Hurley.
No, his father.
Bobby Hurley Sr.
Senior, yeah. But in my experience around Morgan, he showed you how to set a screen. He showed you the fundamentals of shooting a jumper. He showed you the fundamentals of a defensive stance. He didn't, and then I look at another coach, one in this area that I'm not going to say the name, he's yelling and screaming and cursing and blah, 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 blah. That's the thing I see is different.
I like what you said, how he showed you, because to me, when I look at coaches, I say, do you teach the game or do you coach the game?
That's a good point.
I always say that I teach the game. Whatever sport I'm doing, whatever sport I'm coaching, I'm teaching it to you. Now, we'll also get into the coaching aspect, because the coaching aspect, I think, is more or less like keeping them in the right frame of mind, giving them a boost when they need it. Also letting them know that, hey, this is not good enough, we need you. So coaching is encouraging and empowering. But as far as what my main purpose is to teach you the game so you can do it right.
What's funny about sports in general, but track and field in particular, there's the ignorance about track. Well, he can fast, he can just run, he can just run fast. And
I find that all the time.
I mean, they don't realize the technique to running, the technique to start, to a fast start, and all the things that you know better than me. And you look at a player and say, well, he can run fast. It's just like baseball. You can run fast, but it doesn't mean you're a good base runner or you can steal bases.
Because it's a technique to
base running. It's a technique to getting a jump and sliding and the whole thing that it takes to steal a base.
I think today's coaches, I don't say today, I think good coaches are like teachers. They are teachers. And a lot of the great Hall of Fame coaches started out as teachers. Like Vince Lombardi was a physical education teacher. John Wooden was a teacher. He taught school.
Well, look at Phil Jackson. He taught those players that triangle offense.
Right.
They didn't come, Jordan and them didn't have that until he got there, taught them how to run it, got the players that could run it, and, they won 6 titles.
But going back to say about teaching, it's like, and because you're a teacher, well, you probably know, when you have 25, maybe 30 kids in a class, and each one of those kids are different. They have a different personality. They learn differently. So in order to get them to the next level, to bring them up, you kind of have to, you have to meet them where they are and then bring them along. So it's not always about yelling and screaming, or you're not doing this good, or you're not doing that good. It's about teaching, showing them the way, showing them the way.
Well, most guys that are playing on a basketball team are pretty good basketball players.
Absolutely.
Like your brother was telling us earlier how he had to work his way through that whole DeMatha thing. You know, freshman year, sophomore year, you're going like, oh, when am I going to ever make this ball club? You look at all the great guys that you all had playing for you, and you say to yourself, God, I don't know, maybe I could have played, you know. And then you said your senior year you had a better year, you know. So it's all about developing. When you're young, man, you just don't get it sometimes. It's not in your heart that, oh, I can do this, I can do that. But you can't do it yet.
Right.
Because you would be playing. And a lot of times, a lot of coaches are different. They don't see, you know, take a guy like Morgan Wooten. I mean, this guy knows the game of basketball. Now, I'm not saying that you said, hey, maybe I could have, maybe he could have played, you know, but was something that he saw that you weren't doing correctly, you know, to get it in there, you know. So it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Coaching is tough.
I'm gonna tell you what the difference between, again, back to the athletes today and back then.
Okay.
And maybe you've seen this in, you know, your long history of watching sports. You beat a team, you beat somebody by 20 or 30, then you turn around and lose to that same team by 30. Like, that shouldn't happen. You're 30 points better than this team. You're the better team.
That day.
How are you? Okay, but they keep going back and forth. So it's like, it's the day's athlete's mentality. Like, okay, I'll lose by 30. It's another. I'll see him another day. Where the athletes prior, oh no, it stops now. I'm not. You know, you're not going to keep embarrassing me. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. I don't think
they have the pride.
They don't have the pride that the athletes must have back then, or.
Well, I got an example, exactly what you're talking about. In 68, 69, McKinley had what I thought was the greatest team ever around here in D.C. They smoked DeMatha early in the year. Then, when the Knights of Columbus tournament came around, DeMatha beat them by 30, and James Brown, their great player, didn't play that day. They had his jersey draped across his chair, because James had issues physical in those days. And they beat DeMatha, beat McKinley in that Knights of Columbus at least by 25. And McKinley had 4 pros on their team.
Yeah, great players.
Yeah, so, you know, it just happened. You know, one day they blew them out, next day they got blown out.
Well, this conversation, I mean, we wanted to talk about, you know, Glenn Harris and the broadcasting and some of the interesting things that have happened in your career, but this has turned into a session on
talking ball,
coaching philosophy, teaching.
That's right.
But that's what we do here. You know, we can go, but we're going to take a break right now because we're going to go into our final segment. What is Veronica thinking? And that's why I let people know, what am I thinking? Gregory chimes in, and we also ask our guests to chime in on to what they could be thinking as well. So based on our conversation, what I'm thinking about is teaching versus coaching. Is there a difference? Does a coach teach? Can a teacher coach? I say both. I say yes. They can do both. But I've noticed that many of the great Hall of Famer coaches were teachers. And I mentioned earlier in the segment, like Vincent Lombardi was a physical education teacher. John Wooden taught school as well. I mean, these were people that not only were successful as coaches because they had good players. Don't get me wrong, you know, Vincent Lombardi had great players. John Wooden had some great players on those UCLA teams. But again, they taught them how to play their respective games. I'm sure they coached them up, they yelled, because I heard Vince Lombardi can get in somebody's face and let them, you know, have the business. But still in all, he taught his athletes how to play, and actually I think how to be athletes. And I think that's what may be the missing component for coaches today. I mean, even if you are that great coach, don't forget the teaching aspect of it. What would you say?
Yeah, and when you were saying that, it brought me to think about one of my mentors, another DC icon I know you all know very well, Bob Hedden. You know, taught football. He just did the combination. He not only coached football, but then coached girls basketball and was successful in both. So he was able to, you know,
Was he a teacher as well? Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
He was a
yeah.
teacher? Okay, I didn't know.
He was a big time player when he was a player too.
Okay.
So I was with Bob Hedden the other night, and he's a good guy. He's starting to retire now. He's been going so long.
Well, you know what? Maybe we can get him on the show, so we'll leave him for later. But in terms of teaching versus coaching, what would you say about that?
I think both of them are good. You have to, coaches have to learn too. Depends on where they came from. Most coaches that coach pretty good came from a pretty good mentor, you know. And players today, man, you got to go back to home life. What kind of home life they had. I know a guy that played at Maryland, was a great high school player, pretty good college player, but his dad wanted him to be. I think his dad missed out. His dad wasn't a bad player either, but the kid never got to where he could have been. You know, I'm not gonna mention his name, but I mean he was a great player. But after it was over for him. That's it. You know.
Well, I think it's both. You have to coach, you know, X and O's, but you have to teach, and hopefully as a coach. We mentioned Phil Jackson with the triangle. He knew the triangle, backwards, forwards, and whichever way. So he had to teach his guys, which were great players, that particular offense. And you take a guy like Hubie Brown.
Oh, great teacher.
Great teacher, and all of those players, Patino, and all of them have come under him.
Right.
I mean, A.B. Williamson at Howard, all of them have worked his clinics and have been at skull sessions with him, and not one of them will have an adverse thing to say about him as a basketball coach and mind, and a teacher too.
And he was a yeller. He was a yeller. He yells at everything.
Well, I saw him at a clinic, and he is good. He's excellent. But so I guess to conclude, we're saying that teaching is a big part of coaching. So, and that ends our segment on What is Veronica Thinking? We would like to thank our guests, Mr. Glenn Harris, Mr. Ron Harris, the Harris brothers, is that okay to say?
Yeah.
We enjoyed the skull session. I think that's going to be my new term. You know, our little, brain trust thing. And if you want to have a skull session or get in on the brain trust, you can email me at whatisveronicathinking@gmail.com. You can also email Big Little Brother here and get him in on the conversation, because we love to hear from you. We love to hear from our audience. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.